Give my videographer some work. Okay, welcome back to the Concrete Jungle. This is Dr. Mark, and this is O'Neal.
Yeah, so I'm O'Neal, and I'm an educator in Georgia, and I'm this young lady's uncle.
And I'm Mark, and I'm the younger brother to this guy with a huge head. And
Welcome to the jungle.
welcome to the jungle. It's crazy because I feel like I'm actually standing on concrete.
Yeah,
So I feel like I'm in the jungle.
So,
Okay, well, today we're going to talk about mental health, especially mental health in the black community, also in the poor white community and Hispanic community, because I think they all correlate with mental health and not understanding it and taking necessary steps to better themselves.
Okay.
So that's why I got a doctor here and a teacher, an educator who sees it in younger kids at a younger age. So why do you think, well, first off, why do you think that even if we do see little signs, we don't say anything, we don't do anything, because at the same time it's considered this is in-home stuff. We don't bring it out home stuff. And why do you think we look at it as a stigma? It's like, okay, I see something in my kid. Why don't I just, maybe go get them tested just to make sure, than just making it like a situation where it's, nah, they gonna got it.
So first, if I may, I would like to talk about what I see, and I'm not sure how much that aligns with like what the real numbers are as far as mental health in particular community, and then we can go into it. So what I see in the school system is, particularly I work around maybe 80% minority and probably like 20% Caucasian. And in that particular community, I work in a certain socio-economical group, and they tend to be underemployed, undereducated for the most part. And I particularly work with kids with learning needs. Not extreme learning needs, but they're kids with learning disability. So these particular population, I would say upwards of 20% of them have mental health issues, and they tend to come from parents with mental health issues as well. And this is both black and white and Hispanic.
Yeah, so that's similar to what I see. So, and I think if we just think about the numbers as a whole, 1 in 5 American, U.S. born individuals or folks in the United States experience some form of mental health illness at some point in their life. So that's 1 in 5. So the number is large. Even going further, so like 1% of the population, or around 2%, suffer from schizophrenia, right? So the likelihood is someone who has some form of mental health illness, whether you realize it or not. When he talks about being in the school system, there's a certain group of people that you see this more prevalent in, or we assume. So people who are less fortunate or can't afford things, right? So I work in the emergency room, and so I see a lot of people who come in with substance abuse. And the reality is about 50% of each individual with substance abuse actually have some form of mental health illness. So it is definitely in the population that we're talking about, but it extends beyond that. It's not an income thing. Sometimes we miss it because we can't afford, right, to go and look for it. Mm-hmm. So it's very prevalent. So I think, to answer your question, first of all, I think we don't believe that it's as prevalent as it is. So we think we're the only one, right? And so if I'm the only one, I don't want everybody outside the house to know about it. So that's why, I think even having this conversation is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I believe, in particular to the minority community, we grew up in a largely minority community, Hispanics and blacks, and I don't remember it being labeled or we recognizing or being sympathetic towards people that had those type of attributes. So I can see why they also didn't want to come out the shadows.
Yeah, you heard it. Oh, yo, he crazy.
He's bugging.
He's bugging.
That's it. Or mine. It's probably
Right.
like
It's not
drug
straight.
related.
Right.
So do you think that, I was wondering, is there a way to take people who do have mental health illnesses, especially because, think about it, people weren't always on medication, especially in, let's say, BCs. So is there a way for them to not be on medication, but also, do you think as a society they shouldn't have to conform to us, we should conform to them?
So yeah, there are some conditions. That's my belief that you have to have some form of medication for. But at the end of the day, medication does not solve problems.
Yeah.
And we make the assumption that it does. There's no quick pill for everything that solves the problem. You can treat it, but you're not solving it. And so at the end of the day, there's some therapy that's involved. There's family dynamics that often have to change to get people better. But like you're saying, if we're unwilling to even admit it, we're not going to see a therapist.
Okay,
right?
so if a person does admit it, what would be the first step to doing it?
So the number one, realize that there's resources. So we're in a culture in a time where people are seeing mass shootings, right?
Yeah.
And they understand that there is some form of mental health that's involved with what's going on. So there are resources that the government has available. The schools have resources. Like you can literally stop in the emergency room and we have to take care of you and have to get you certain resources to get that help.
Yeah.
So there's help. So you have to first admit it and then actually go and look for it. There are helplines. Literally, if you Google like suicide or these sort of things, you'll see a lot of resources that pop up where you can actually go in and get help.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So okay. What in schools? What would be resources? And like, what are the resources that students even have to access anyway?
You can, when you say resources.
Oh wait, hold on. We're gonna come back with that in part 2, but right now we're gonna go shine the spotlight on a black business right now. So we'll be right back.
Hey, what is up? We are here. This is Maya X highlighting the black business for you. So we're gonna go to Instagram. We're gonna go to her page. This is Nisi Beauty Supply Store. She owns her own beauty supply store and it's black owned. Most of the times behind the counter will be her. They have everything. I went in there personally and got As I Am, because that's my favorite product. They got Wild Girl too. They bought it back. They have a lot of wigs, whoever's a wiggy, I guess, out there. And just a great thing to see a black owned business. Go support them.
All right, we're back. Show that business some love and support because that's all they need. So we were in a question about what are the resources that students have in school. Like, say if a student comes up to you and say, "Hey, I think something's not right."
Yeah. So if a student comes to you and says, "Mr. O'Neill, like I'm bugging, man. I really think I'm seeing things."
Okay.
What would you do?
So first, being an educator, my first line of duty would be to get as much information as I can from that student. So I would then and there, if it's a situation where I have 5 or a few minutes, I would speak to them. If it's 30 seconds, I would still package the questions so I can get as much information I can within that 30 minutes or 5 minutes. So what would I do? I would say, "What do you mean?" And then let's say the detail is
right. And you overall you just have concerns. I say,
so you're a student.
I'm seeing things. I'm hearing things, and I'm talking to my mom about it at home, and she's not listening to me.
Okay. So you're seeing and hearing things. How often this happens?
Every day.
Every day?
It's been happening all semester.
Okay.
That's the reason why I'm not turning in my assignments, because all these voices I'm hearing are telling me, "You can't do this test."
Okay. What do you think? Do you believe it?
Yep. I see it. I hear it.
So,
I don't know what to do.
Mark, I appreciate the fact that you came and you felt comfortable enough to talk to me about it. I'm not a trained counselor or a psychologist, but I definitely have someone that I would love for you to speak with, because this is something that clearly is an issue for you, and what you're saying is impacting you in the school. So I would like to set up an appointment, or perhaps I'll walk you down to see the counselor or psychologist. And
so there's someone here who I can talk to?
Definitely.
So after that, though, after they
resources
talk to somebody, what's their other plan? Because some people aren't really talkers, who can't, you know what I mean? They need more. Well, what, that's the only resources school has? Or like, will the school go into other resources like, hey, let's get that kid tested or something like that, which will lead to something else, or doctor visits or something else?
So, number one, I think from the medical side of things, there's no crazy test. You can't go and get a blood work and it says, "Oh, yep, he has this or she has that." I think that, to his point, diagnosis comes from conversations, and you have to have a conversation to get to the root cause of what is it that you're truly dealing with, and what resources do we have.
Okay.
So there's a dialogue, a level of communication that has to happen, even if you're outside of the medical system, and definitely if you're inside the medical system. There's a lot of conversation.
So wait, but I don't want to step in your space as far as being a medical doctor, but I imagine that there's certainly a chemical that correlates with depression, right?
So now where we're going into is talking about some cutting edge stuff, right? So the reality is, for most of mental health, we don't have a good grasp on what is it. Is it a section in the brain? Yes, we know there are certain parts that impact emotion, but we don't know all the biochemistry of it. We don't know that yet. So in those places in the brain, we know how to prescribe medicines that impacts those areas, and maybe you may feel better, but we're not solving problems with medication, to your point.
So, and maybe, I don't know if we have time for me to give you an example of an experience without mentioning names that I've had in the school. Similar situation like that.
Okay. We're not going to air people out then.
No, okay. All right.
But to a person who would say then, how accurate is the test? How you know you're not misdiagnosing somebody?
So, and that's your point. So there is no test. For example, when people come, I see at any given day, there's about 10 to 15 individuals in the emergency room.
This is a population of how big is that city you're talking about?
So you're talking about a population of about 700,000.
What demographic?
So all. For the most part, it's spread. There's high income, low income, doesn't matter. White, black, Hispanic, doesn't matter.
Okay.
All comers.
Age group?
I see anywhere between 7 years old who said, I'm burning the building up and I'm killing mom, to the 80-year-old who came from the nursing home who said, listen, if my wife in the next year, if she dies, I'm hanging myself. And he looks at you and you believe him. So there's no limitation to this. And we do some tests to screen, like we do some basic medical tests and say we want to make sure there's nothing otherwise medically contributing to the way you're feeling or thinking.
Yeah.
And then after that point where we call a medical clearance, then we get the psychiatrist involved. So then it's conversations.
Yeah.
To now then diagnose.
So then you can see how the
conversations diagnose mental health illnesses and then lead you down the road to figure out how can I address it.
But when people hear this, they think like automatically, like the first thing I started thinking when you said diagnosis in the hospital. Okay, people think psych ward. They think you're going to strap me down to a chair. I'm not crazy like that. I still can function in human day society. But you're trying to put me in a place where people probably, thinking they're still 4 when they're like 59. So people are seeing that. They see what the media perceives basically, and basically that's what they see. So is there a difference are there different hospitals too, let's say, or different wards for somebody who's not, insane?
Yeah.
Between, like the levels of different.
So, but quickly answer that, let O'Neill come in. So you can get outpatient treatment for conditions. And again, this may just be, let's start with a core conversation in your church, right? To form a group where you're just having conversation about what you're dealing with. How are you coping with things?
Yeah.
And it can go another step further where you go to, just a group where a psychiatrist or just a therapist, not a psychiatrist, who's leading this, and they have structured conversation. They know how to help you to think through certain things, right? So it's not all being in a hospital. Everybody doesn't need to be in a psych ward, right? Because I would say there's a large percentage of people who, after a psychiatrist sees them in the emergency room, they go home. They go home to then follow up with the therapist as an outpatient. So everybody doesn't need medicines or need to be in a hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, so to jump in on that, not only, you asked about the different tiers of support that's available in the school, and different tiers, of support for a student that has a crisis. I would say is definitely like immediate family, and then from there it's going to be a teacher, and then from the teacher it's going to be a counselor, and from the counselor it's going to be a psychologist. All the schools, they have psychologists, they have counselors and teachers in place. And then if that can't be handled, it needs to move up to a psychiatrist at a medical setting where they can, as Mark said, ask them structured questions to see if there needs to be other interventions,
Okay.
whether it is a medical professional.
All right.
So at the end of the day, we have to have conversations about this because it's there, it's in school, it's in your group of friends, it's in our household, wherever you think, they're there. So we just have to accept it and address it.
All right.
Because it's not just they're dealing with, but we're being affected by it as well.
I'm sorry to cut y'all off. But
You're not sorry. You did cut us off.
it
Yeah.
is. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Subscribe to anything that I'm about to put in the link below for Dr. Smiley and anything I'm about to put in the link below for O'Neal. They have great things coming. Thank you. I appreciate you tuning in. All right.
All right.
Welcome to the jungle.
The concrete jungle.
That's right.
Yeah.